Rick, the critic, when she come into your place, yo, you best not forget it. She gon' tell you how it is, cause she's Rick, the critic, when she all up in your city, yo, you best not forget it. Let you know if she like it, and if she get with it, let the whole world know and be the first to admit it. Let you know if it's good and if she dig it, cause she's Rick, the critic, Rick, the critic, Rick, the critic, Rick, the critic, she the first to admit it if she can't dig it, cause she's Rick, the critic, Rick.
Hi, I'm Rick the Critic, and thank you for allowing me to come into your home today. I have some wonderful information today. We're going to talk about radiation. My guest today is LV. He's out of San Pedro in California, and we're going to talk about how the tsunami and the earthquake has affected us. Even though it's in Japan, we're going to talk about the effects and how it's rippled to us and what we are to expect as far as our seafood. I'm a seafood lover. My guest, LV, is a seafood lover. We love shrimp and prawn, and we love swordfish, and we like all types of seafood. So we want to talk about the effects and how you can kind of protect yourself and kind of look out and see exactly what you can, what you look for, what not to look for, and just overall how you will be able to still enjoy some seafood without and feel a little safe. Okay, so my guest is LV, and LV, we're talking to you from San Pedro about fish.
Hi, Rick.
Welcome.
Hi, Rick. Good to see you.
Listen, you and I have talked about the fish and the effects of it. We both love fish.
Oh, indeed.
We both we were kind of overwhelmed about all the information that we got, at least I was.
Indeed.
Kind of share with the viewers today with me the effects that Japan had on us as far as our food is concerned, the tsunami, the earthquake, the whole thing. Share with us, please.
Okay. Now, many of you folk remember that all began with that earthquake that was in Japan that was like over 9 on the Richter scale. Now, you got to remember that when it's 1 point, you're talking about 100 times or better the force a point. And that is pretty much devastation of power. Well, then there was this tsunami that came over there and washed over all of Japan. If you saw any of the footage on YouTube or whatever, that's quite intense stuff. Don't you agree, Rick?
Wow. You know what? I didn't get a chance to really see the devastation afterwards, but I did hear there was a lady that came on television and she said something about she was on top of the roof for I don't know how many days. Her husband was here in California and he was just a nervous wreck because he couldn't get to his wife, and she had a cell phone with her.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I did not take the time to prepare to send you some of the graphic footage, and I used the word graphic extensively. You would see the scenes where there was this giant tsunami just washing on land, and this one long little figure was just running. And of course, they cut off mercifully to show whatever became of that individual. I hope he did make it.
It was a person?
It was a person. And I have the footage at home, and I'll send it to you next time if we ever talk about that. It's quite intense. It's very intense footage, seeing this power. Now, then we heard about the Fukushima meltdown, and that was a red flag to me. Because let's go back, folks, and talk about what we remember in radiation. You hear about this thing called a half-life. A half-life. Some isotopes, you're talking about 60 years. I forgot, was it radium or whatever it was. And then they talk about the half-life of nuclear type materials. And I remember that the radiation from one of those spent oil rods was something like 4,600 years. That's a half-life. You might as well use the word forever. And that made me think, if this stuff were to get into our water, it's just like saying goodbye to eating seafood. And we're talking about how that stuff can affect you there is no, I repeat, folks, there is no safety amount of radiation that you can accept in your body.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
And let me ask you, and I'm saying this because I was talking to a friend of mine, and they were taking the chemo.
Mm-hmm.
And what the doctor said to them is that they would take it in very baby or small doses.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I thought, a small dosage, a large dosage, a dosage is a dosage. You know, that was my thought. And then I thought, well, he's a doctor, and, you know, that's just my thought. But what I also want to talk to you about, because you and I talked about it a little bit.
Yes.
Now, we're talking about the tsunami and we're talking about the radiation
Yes.
with the fish. But remember, we talked about years back with the Hershey, out in Hershey.
Oh, the
Remember
Hershey
the
bar.
Hershey bars.
The Hershey bars. Well, I cannot go up there and say, do not go to Hershey factory because they're bad or anything like that. No, I'm not going to say anything like that.
No.
But if you remember, there was that meltdown at 3 Mile Island, which is 13 miles away from the town of Hershey. And they released, remember, those gases that went all around. You know, when the wind blows, anything can go anywhere, anytime. And so that made me think about what that does affect Hershey bars.
Well, remember, there was a doctor. Who was it? What was the doctor's name?
Helen Caldicott, Dr.
Right.
Helen Caldicott.
Right.
And she's put out that warning back in 1985, stay away from Hershey's, because there were too many cases of cancer and leukemia floating around.
Now, was that in the town of Hershey? Because let me tell you something. Out of 10 people that I know, at least 3 of them will claim to have or say that they have cancer. I have never in my entire life heard so many cancer stories. I mean,
Right.
whenever you talk to someone, it's like, I have cancer in the leg. I have cancer here. I mean, it could be anywhere in your body. I've just
Yes.
never, when I was coming up, cancer, the big C word, I mean,
big
you saw
C
that
word.
in elderly people.
Yes.
You saw diabetes in
Yes.
elderly people. You didn't see those diabetes or those type of diseases in babies and in children and in young adults. Those were things that we saw in elderly people. And
Yes.
now it is nothing for a baby to be born and have diabetes, have to have shots. I mean, actually
Right.
take insulin. And it's nothing for a person. I saw a 22-year-old a couple months ago. I went to Arizona to visit for one reason, and then I thought while I was there, we'll go visit her in the hospital. And she had cancer in the leg.
Oh.
That is, I mean, at 22.
22.
So I got to think about these things seriously when we're talking about candy and all of that. And now here we are. How many years ago was that?
Oh,
That
you're
was,
going back
80
at least 30, almost
Okay.
25 years.
All right, so now, and here we are again, 25 years later, 30 years later.
Yes.
Now we have another
Oh, yes. Yes.
major radiation. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying?
I know
And
exactly.
people are so, they're unaware. They are still just kind of moving around like it's, I mean, and even though it's in Japan, now this is the thing, LV, even though it's in Japan, how are we getting it? I mean, how are we getting those effects here?
Well, what triggered me that concern, what also came to the relationship to the 3 Mile Island is the disbursement. There in 3 Mile Island was just the air. But as you know, fish do not stay in one place at all the time. And as you know, that is a living body of water that slushes around. It stirs and stirs. So that made me think about that stuff can spread. And as a matter of fact, when the rainstorms came over here, you heard on the news report that there was some elements of radiation in that rain. And then they quit talking about it. That puts red flags to me. So that made me concerned that the fish I love and stuff, if they don't swim towards us, such as whales and things, that water does slush around, and it also triggers the alarm that how much is in that stuff? And I do not get enough information. And hey, I need to hear from independent scientists on a regular basis what is happening to our water from the ocean, and how does it affect our sea life we love to get to enjoy as food. And does that mean, do we become vegetarians or go vegan to protect ourselves from ever getting overdosage? What may be acceptable dosage for you may not be the same for me, and vice versa.
Right. Absolutely.
So there are no set Geiger counters any place in your fish stores, and I notice many people don't buy fish anymore ever since that incident. Every time I go to my little local store, I used to see all kinds of people buying fish. I have not yet seen one person, all the times when I go to that store, buying fish. And then I heard from you, I recall that when you came to San Pedro, you noticed that people weren't buying as much fish as they usually have.
No, and you know, the interesting thing about that is that when I go to San Pedro, I go at 4 in the morning on Saturdays, because you can go on the docks and you can buy fish wholesale. And at some time, LV, you would have to fight the people.
Yep.
Because all of the doors are open and they're selling everything that comes out the water. And you really literally had to fight. The place didn't open up until 5, but you had to get there at 4 just to be able to get on the dock. So, and that crowd has just kind of evened out a little bit. It's just, you can see it's not as many people as it was in the beginning. And I mean, they've been open like this for many, many years.
Forever.
But the other thing that I thought about too is, remember there was an animal, was it a dog, that they found in the middle of the water? And then I also heard where a body washed up in Oregon, I think, or Washington. Now that's just right up the street from us, as far as I'm concerned. That's just right up the street. So my thought was, if it could come this far, what else could come? I mean, and fish certainly swim.
That's right.
You know, and I'm not saying, we're not trying to cause a panic here about eating fish or eating any type of seafood. That is not what we are talking about. It's just being aware and just being cautious and being careful when you eat your food. When you eat your food, you pray over it, and absolutely, you know, you need to be concerned. Even when you go to your fish market, you need to ask the butcher behind the counter, listen, where did this fish come from?
Well, also, you have to remember marketing plays a big part into how we buy things. And that's why I was going back. I need independent scientists or science groups to verify. Our government tries to do many good things, but also they promote commerce. So at times, to protect the commerce, as they were doing down in Katrina during that time with the oil spills, it's all, come on, it's all right, it's all good. You don't hear as much reporting, and then we'll hear about various illnesses, because you don't get sick overnight in most cases, but then you can trigger many unhealthy after effects. That's where my concern is, where it may affect me. If I were supposed to live 100 years, I may only live 80.
Yeah. Okay, well, listen, stay right here. We're going to have a quick break, commercial, and as soon as we come back, we're going to talk some more with LV, and we're going to talk about the effects of radiation, how they affect us, and even in small dosage, what they can do to our body. Okay?
There is really only one boy. One girl. One tree. One forest. One deep, dancing ocean. One mountain calling. One handful of sand through our fingers. One endless sky overhead. And one simple way to care for it all. Please visit earthshare.org and learn how the world's leading environmental groups are working together under one name, EarthShare. One environment, one simple way to care for it.
Just came in out from outside, or if you were in the kitchen. My guest today is LV. We're talking about radiation. We're talking about the effects that the tsunami and the earthquake and the radiation from Japan, how it affects us as far as our eating, our food in the sea, our economy. The Japan disaster has affected us in many, many ways, and even though it was a while back, we still are feeling the ripple effects of that. So I'm talking with LV today, and we're talking about the radiation. We're talking about the cancers that the radiations cause. And as I was talking to you earlier, I am having a really big problem with every time I talk to people. At least out of 5 people, there are 2 people that have cancer. They've been diagnosed with cancer. And I just never saw so much of it. And so I've got to believe we're talking airborne. I got to believe we're talking water. I got to believe we're talking food or something. So I am not trying to create a panic here. What I am talking about is just us being aware. If we have to just go a little to the next store instead of going to this store, we may have to buy our groceries at another store. We may have to travel a little further to get what's best for us.
Or do what First Lady Michelle Obama's doing, start growing our own foods.
There you go. There you go.
What you put in is what you get.
Exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, because in fact, I was going to talk about that, the vertical gardens that they have now. So you can live in an apartment and have a garden of edible landscape, and also fruits and vegetables and wonderful edible plants.
Yes. We have many friends, I'm sure you do have many friends who are vegetarians or vegans who swear that they're much healthier, and I have to admit, on days when I do go vegetarian or for a period of time just to cleanse the body, I do feel better. Much as I love flesh, I'm coming to a point where I rather feel good than have something that tastes so good. So it's just a matter of how we choose for ourselves.
It does make you feel heavy, doesn't it?
Yes,
when you eat the
does.
meat. I love ribs.
Yes.
And I tell you, I mean, I feel so heavy, LV.
Yes.
The next day, when I get up in the morning, I'm just limp almost. I mean, but if I go to bed and I've just had some vegetables, I seem to be more energetic in the morning. But I have a niece that goes to school for agriculture, and you know what she said to me? That no one is a complete vegan or vegetarian because on the plant there is meat.
There's enough protein there to sustain us. And that's what their argument is, that you don't need to have flesh when there is sufficient enough in your plants and vegetables and nuts to sustain you. But going back to our subject of radiation, it's mainly, I speak as a concerned citizen. I'm not a scientist. I only read what's available, or is there some good information, not infomercials, but information that tells us what's happening to our foods. I'm going to pay attention to it. I'm also like to look at all sources, be it government, producer, consumer, but I love independent science because they tend to try not to bring a bias either way. And that is what's lacking, and ongoing information. We won't hear too much about the cases of cancer until a few years later down the road, because cancer does not come overnight.
I know, and that's the hard thing. I lost my dad a couple of years ago. When I saw him, he went to the doctor one day, and he came back and he says, "You know what, Rick?" He says, have, I have, what is it, stage 4 cancer,
yes.
lung cancer, and they've given me 6 months to live." And in 6 months, he was gone. And
Yes.
then the following year, my sister, my brother called me on the phone and said, "Rick, you know, you got to come down." My sister Ava, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and her husband. So her husband died on the 24th, and she died on the 25th. So my nephew lost his mother on one day and his father on one day and his mother on the next day.
Oh.
And they both had lung cancer, stage 4. Now, they both smoked, and even my dad smoked cigarettes, and they both drank. All three of them drank, and I know that has a lot to do with it, the cigarettes. But in my mind, I cannot believe that someone could actually give you an expiration date, can say to you, "Look, you know, you have this and you have X amount of time to live." That is unbelievable.
Well, it goes back to using our resources that are available to us. Now, I'm not much of a fan of visiting the doctor. How about you?
No, I'm not.
I do not like to be exposed, looked at, pried, and least of all, poke with sharp instruments to take out blood and things. But that is a necessary thing to prolong life. Know ahead of time something could come there to cause me problems or shorten my life. There is enough science to help overcome it if we know ahead of time. That's why they always say, come visit your doctor at least twice a year.
Yes.
So until I had some other little problems that weren't diagnosed, because my folks didn't go to the doctor, and okay, lo and behold, my father had a case of diabetes. And I couldn't quite believe it because there's some politics at home that go on. But then I was diagnosed with it. So the doctor says, eat more fruit, eat more vegetables, but really eat more fruit. And I said, I like fruit, but I'm not crazy about it. So I just made that choice. Do I want to risk going blind with the diabetes, which is one of the cases when it goes advanced?
Right.
So I had to start changing my diet. I exercise more. I cut down my flesh. Yes, I do barbecue now and then. But it's just a matter of making prudent choices and just commit to that thing. It's like going to church. If you are a person of faith, you're more than likely to go to church regularly, and you would feel downright crazy if you don't attend. Well, our bodies work that way too. We have to respect what the Creator has given us. It's just a matter of showing love and respect, not only to the Creator, but to yourself. You love yourself more when you do. It's not that everybody's going to look like Twiggy or Fabio or something like that. No, we all are our own entity. But the thing is to do enough and get enough information to make ourselves say, hey, I did try and I do feel good at who I am.
Everyone is not going to be a size 3,
No.
and everyone's not going to be, more. But what we just work with what we have and do the best that we can do with what we have. We work with what we have. I am just. A lot of my friends are vegetarians, and some of them are vegans. And I lived in Loma Linda for a short time, a couple years or so, and so that's a Seventh-day Adventist town, and they don't eat meat. Mm-hmm. And so it was really interesting to me just how I was able to just change over. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was actually able to eat and really enjoy because the food just tastes so good. I really didn't miss the meat.
That's the bottom line flavor.
I really didn't. I had jerky, and I had everything that I eat normally. Mm-hmm. I had that. Mm-hmm. And it just turned out to be very, very, I didn't miss it at all. And when I left there, I think I stayed there almost 3 years. And when I left there, I just kind of just moved right on back gradually into that. But I'm seriously almost thinking about moving back there just to get into that habit of eating right.
Yeah.
You know, because that's all it really is about. It's about choices and eating right. I am so happy that you came today and to share with us. And again, we definitely want to say to our viewers that this is not a shock. We are not saying, listen, stop eating fish. We're not saying stop eating food. We're saying that just be careful. And when you make choices, just make sure that you make wise choices. What is it? It's farm raised fish. There's
Yes.
farm raised fish. You might want to look into those choices. It is a little pricey, but I mean, what's the price on the body? What's the price on health? So there are some choices to be made.
Indeed.
And that's what we want you to do. We want you to be aware and make better choices.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Now, if you could, would you yourself, Rick, let's say start an organic farm or a fish farm on your own or something like that down the road?
Absolutely. 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 And when we talked about it, I definitely, absolutely. Because I'm thinking about not just me, I have children, I have grandchildren.
Oh, yes.
And hopefully, with God willing, I'll live to see my great-grandchildren and my great-great-grandchildren. And so I would love for them to be healthy. I would love for them to be able to enjoy their food without having to look and wonder, you know, is this right or is that right? But again, it's back to choices. Again, thank you so much for
Indeed.
coming, LV. I
Indeed.
hope you will come back again.
Yep.
I had a wonderful time. Thank you, viewers, for allowing us to come into your home and talk to you about radiation and the effects of radiation. Thank you for letting us share. We hope to see you again, and thank you for tuning in. And remember, the person that needs the least amount of love needs the most amount of love shows the least. I think that's how that goes.
Indeed. Come on down to San Pedro, Rick.
Thank you, LV from San
Rick, the critic, when she come into your place, yo, you best not forget it. She gon' tell you how it is, cause she's Rick the critic. When she all up in your city, yo, you best not forget it. Let you know if she like it, and if she get with it, let the whole world know and be the first to admit it. Let you know if it's good and if she dig it, cause she's Rick the critic. Rick the critic, Rick the critic, Rick the critic. She the first to admit it if she can't dig it, cause she's Rick the critic, 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 Rick the critic,